If you're a confessing Christian and I were to ask you this evening, how did you come to faith? You would tell me a story.
My great-grandfather, Heinrich Baumann, Daniel pronounced my name Bowman because most of my family is pronouncing it Bowman now. It's simpler. But originally it was Heinrich Baumann from Deutschland, who loaded everything he had into a big wooden trunk. We still have it today. And he left from Bremen, Deutschland, Germany, took a ship over to Ellis Island, and came into our country. They asked him to drop an N at the end of his name, make it more simple. Heinrich Baumann. I am an immigrant. Stephen Baumann, Stefan Baumann is an immigrant, just 3 generations removed. How many here? How many here are immigrants? Is there anybody here who cannot raise their hand? Maybe First Nations, Original Americans. Have we forgotten where we've come from and the promise that came to our ancestors and the mercy perhaps that was given them and the process upon which they could become legal citizens like my grandfather, Heinrich Baumann, in 1852 in New York City.
You know, I grew up, you heard, in Miami with an Irish mother and a Cuban father, and I took my mother's ethnotypes much more than my father's. My father has beautiful dark skin, the color of café con leche. 2 of my sisters got his beautiful dark skin, and I got my mom's skin color. So I didn't have his beautiful skin type. I didn't have his exotic accent where he would say to people, you know my son, Carlos, I cannot believe him, but he is a professor and a doctor of English, and I cannot still speak English. I'm the only one that could tease my dad about his accent. So I didn't have his exotic accent or his facility with the Spanish language. And instead, the only gift I had from him that I saw as a curse as a young man was my name, Carlos Campo. You cannot be Carlos Campo and be Irish, right? Right? You can't be an Anglo and be Carlos Campo. Everything else about me. I mean, I was trained in Shakespeare. I can quote from the great texts of Milton, but I couldn't shed my identity. And I'll tell you what, as a young man, it's precisely what I hoped to do. I mean, I remember literally having the thought, longing to be John or Peter, to somehow shorten my name, make it Carl. Carl Camp. Hi, I'm Carl Camp. See, see, it's ludicrous. I know. I was 12. Help me. But Richard Rodriguez says, you know, folks, we don't realize what it is to be the other. That sometimes the simplest conversations, hi, who are you? Hi, what's your name? Carlos. Hi, my name's Carlos. And if I say it like that, I've already distanced you. So I'll say Carlos. Hi, I'm Carlos. Carlos. Funny, you don't look like a Carlos. Right? There's the most typical response. So already, I've now been alienated. Oh, okay, I have not met your expectation. I'm sorry. Do you have a picture in your wallet that tells me what the Carlos should look like? And so I know what the type is, right? Mustache, some sort of cape or something red. I don't know. But I've let you down. So that conversation, Carlos, you don't look like a Carlos. Where are you from? Simple question. It's innocuous. But to a stranger, to a G, to a stranger very often, why are you asking me where I'm from? Well, why would I not be from here? Because Rodriguez says, you know, the darkest point of that question is not only do we know you're not from here because you don't look like you're from here, your name doesn't indicate you're from here. Not only do we know that you're not from here, but you don't belong here. You don't belong here. And as a 12-year-old, and a 22-year-old, depending on who we are, a 32-year-old, this struggle to belong, right? How strong this is to belong. What will I not shed to belong? And I think about my own experience, and I didn't sense that there was a single barrier other than my name for me to completely assimilate into the dominant culture. None. I don't know that there was. I mean, folks, I'm a university president. I should be the last person on earth to talk about barriers. But I'll never forget, I know for me that it was standing in front of classrooms in Las Vegas, Nevada, the meadows, snow fallen, right? That's the way that translates. So there I am, sitting in front of English classes, but almost everyone in my class are dark-skinned. They're Latinos. And there are a lot of Latinos in Las Vegas, but wait a minute. There's a preponderance in my class, and I asked the question, why? I asked them, why? ¿Por qué? Tanto de ustedes aquí en mi clase, ¿por qué? Son muchos maestros de inglés. There are many English teachers. Why are you in my class? Why? And you know what they said? It was your name, Dr. Campo. We saw Campo in the catalog. And so that's why we've come. We've come. So that name that you wanted to doff, like Romeo wanted to doff his name, it was just your name because we thought there was something precious in it. There was something that linked us to you, and we thought maybe you understood something about us, our struggle, and who we are. And God spoke something to me, not to me generally, not to a population of people. He spoke something to my heart. He said, Carlos, these are your sons and daughters. They're your sons. Do you hear the shame in their own voices? Because they would say to me, Dr. Campo, some of them undocumented, many of them documented, but ashamed of their Hispanic heritage. Ashamed, as I remember being at 12. Ashamed and wanting to be somebody else, anybody else. And the Lord said, these are your children. Help them to find who they are in their Hispanicness, and of course, even more broadly, who they are in the kingdom of God. Right? This idea of belonging. Here we are. Our citizenship is in heaven. Right? We're fighting.
But my journey is a bit different because here, just like the angel came to Joseph and Mary and told them to go to Egypt, in my case, I was unsaved in Canada. And my Christian conversion experience was about a month before I got a job offer I never applied for and I didn't want. But I went to the interview anyway because I couldn't say no. And so I went to an interview for a job I didn't want to go, to a place I didn't really want to go. And I ended up getting the job and accepting it. Although I was guided by the Spirit very early on. And so here we jumped in a car. We had no idea what was going to happen. In my case, I was one of those people who qualified for the visa because Canada has an agreement. And since I was a master engineer, I was able to come over with that. But what was very funny is that we hadn't really thought about immigration or paperwork or anything like that. And I'm getting ready to take my wife, and we had 3 children at the time. And my father-in-law comes up to me and says, this might be handy. And he gives me my wife's American birth certificate. She did not know she was American. And so I said, well, that changes things a little bit. But so we went to the border, and this was a little bit tricky because our daughter was 3 weeks old, and we had no paperwork for her. You can't get more undocumented than that. We had her, and we had these papers from the hospital, but no birth certificate, nothing. And they were nice enough to let us in, although this later caused problems because when we took her out later, they had no record of her going in the United States. So now they thought that she wasn't our child. They didn't know what she was. So they were going to allow, at that point we had 6 children, and they were going to let 5 in and 1 not. But we came here, and I remember driving here with my wife who'd never been anywhere but Quebec or Pennsylvania. And so we're driving, and then the sun was setting as we were entering Colorado, and a dust devil goes across the highway, and she just burst into tears. She said, I don't want to live in the Wild West. But then we came here, and we had all sorts of interesting challenges becoming American. At first, my wife was American, but I had to apply, and then I remember going to the doctors they specified, and they said, well, we don't trust your health record, so you have to get every shot you ever were supposed to get. So after feeling like a pincushion, that was done, and then you had to get fingerprinted, and this was all before 9/11, and actually I got my permanent residency 2 months before 9/11. Then later I went to try to become a citizen. All of a sudden, the entire department disappeared and now have to go to Homeland Security. But it's still.
I am an immigrant in this great nation. I came to this land of opportunity 16 years ago. I was born in Tasco del Arcón, Guerrero, a small mining town in southwest Mexico, very famous for its silver crafts. My father was a taxi driver, and my mother sold the tickets at the local cinema. We lived in the Barrio del Panteón, or the neighborhood of the cemetery, a neighborhood in pretty bad shape and dirt roads. I left my hometown when I finished middle school. I went to study high school in Mexico City. To me, this big metropolis represented an opportunity to get out of my neighborhood and succeed. I loved my town, and I still do, but it just lacked the educational opportunities that I was looking for. I liked school. I always got good grades, even when I was far away from the care and supervision of my parents. When I was at the National University of Mexico, a teacher saw potential in me. He asked me to try to enter El Colegio de México, one of Mexico's most prestigious institutions of higher education. I remember going back to Tasco to tell my parents about this suggestion. My father told me not to try because paying for my studies was already pretty hard for him, and he was not able to contribute any more money. I also remember my mother setting me aside. She told me, "Mario, my son, this school looks pretty expensive, but you should give it a try and find out how much it costs. Maybe some money here and there we can afford it for you." It turned out that El Colegio de México was a public university, but it was very difficult to get in. I passed 3 rounds of examinations and was accepted. There were only 12 students in my generation for my program. This event, this opportunity transformed my life. After El Colegio de México, I earned a scholarship by the British Council to study a master's degree in public policy and public administration at the London School of Economics. My first travel abroad was to study in London. After London, I worked on international affairs in Mexico, and then I came to the Graduate School of Public Affairs of the University of Colorado at Denver to do a PhD in public affairs, where I completed all the required coursework with my dissertation. And here I am. 4 years ago, I became a US citizen, and I work for an amazing company with global reach, Western Union, located right here in Colorado. It has been a long road for this kid of El Barrio del Panteón, and I am eternally grateful to this country and to its people for their kindness and generosity. Now let me...
I remember the first day of school, and it was just, I can't never forget it because it was my uncle who took me. And then he was like, "Okay, mija, like, you need to go." And it was, there was not a program in that school where it was just English speaking. And I would not let go of my uncle because, the little kids, like, they did this big circle around me, and they were like, they knew I didn't speak English, so they were very curious. They were like, "Oh, where is she from?" And I remember them just pointing at me and, like, talking to me, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is not, And so I started school, and of course I didn't have friends. I kind of like just hated going to school. I hated it. I was just like, I think the hardest thing was that my mom, when she was here and I was in Guatemala, she would tell me, you know, you're gonna love it. You're gonna have all this, and you're gonna make friends. You're gonna have everything that you don't have over there, which was like having 3 meals a day, toys, shoes, clothes. But at that moment, I just wanted to go back home, and it was hard. I would get bullied. I would be called really bad names.
Thanks for sharing. Alex, what brought you?
One of the things that I tell people is that my disadvantage was that when I came into this country, I came with a Kenyan passport. That Kenyan passport cost me so much. There was this one time, we were going for a conference in Australia. All the other Americans had their visa mailed to their homes. They could do it online. As for me, I had to travel all the way to DC, to the Australian consulate. Another time I was going to Mexico, in the state of Sinaloa, Culiacan, in the state of Sinaloa. I was going for a workshop again there in Mexico. Guess what? I went to the Mexican consulate in New York. They kept me going there for 1 whole week. They wouldn't give me the visa. As soon as I presented my Kenyan passport, no, go and get more evidence that you're not going to stay in Mexico. Coming back to US. So I went back and forth 1 whole week. Another time, still with my Kenyan passport. My Kenyan passport is full of stamps. I went to an Italian embassy in New York. I was going to Italy to do a conference. And I could never, by the time I got my visa to go to Italy, the time the conference was over, somebody else went. Because it took me so long, because my application to the immigration kept on getting denied. I tried to change my visa. I have gone through like 4. Before my green card, I went through 4 visas. It took me over 15 years to get my status, because you have to file, keep on filing through with the lawyers, and then H to green card.
You know, my mother, every once in a while, she'd tell me the stories of when she first came to this country and her accent, and people make fun of her. And when she'd get nervous, you know, even though she'd been here like 50 years, the accent would kind of kick in. You know, I'm kind of like Obed, the son of the story. You see, Obed was the son of a Moabite mother and an Israelite father. He was a half-breed, just like me. I'm half Guatemalan and half American, and you know, I didn't go through what my mother did. And probably that little boy would never go through what his mother went through. At the end of the story, you get the genealogy of David, and what you begin to see is that this little immigrant family is part of a bigger story that they didn't even imagine.
I don't know if many of you know, in Littleton downtown area, there's this center or school called the Colorado Center for the Blind. I know Jeff Hainan knows where that is. And so I got a job there And I said, you know, it's wonderful you want to hire me, but even before you want to hire me, I have a proposal for you. I'm an international student, and if you want to hire me, will you sponsor me for my H-1B and eventually for my green card? And they said, we want you, whatever it takes, we will stand by you. So in that process, you know, I worked it, and then immigration battle was continued, and 911 happened. So it took even longer. So by the time I held the green card in my hand, that was August 14 of 2006, I had already lived in the US for 16 years. I hadn't seen my family for 16 years. It was only faith that God, Spirit, whatever we call and we respect, because of God's blessings and His Spirit, my family knew I was well here, and I knew my family was well there, but we didn't see them for 16 years. I clearly remember the evening I held the green card. I'm sorry, I'm becoming emotional here. When I held the card in my hand, I called my family. I called my mom back home, and I told her, Mom, I will come to see you. I will come to see my family. I'll come to visit my country. And she said, when? I said, in 3 months. She said, daughter, I have waited for you for 16 years. Because of God's blessings, we knew we will see each other. But let me tell you, 16 years went by like 3 years. 3 more months, I can wait for you. It will be another 3 more days. Thank you.
There's a family in my neighborhood from Rwanda. Really wonderful couple. They came to this country fleeing some persecution. They pled asylum and were granted asylum in this country. So they eventually got their legal status straightened out. And they just became really good friends of me and my wife. And mentors to us in our first couple years of marriage. Really strong Christian couple. About a year and a half ago now, we told them, this was a prayer request, that we had really been struggling because we had really wanted to have a baby. And this wasn't happening for more than a year. This wasn't happening. We were wondering if it wasn't going to happen. And they prayed for us. And about 7 months ago now, I got to go over with my wife and tell them that my wife was pregnant, expecting a baby. And they immediately fell on the ground, prostrate, and started shouting something and I don't know, Kinyarwanda or Swahili, I'm not quite sure, but it was a lot of Jesus and Alleluias. And they told us that they had been fasting every Thursday for us. And that I just started crying because I don't fast for myself, right? I don't pray enough for other people to say I don't even pray for myself that much. But they decided every Thursday they were going to fast and pray that the Lord would give us a child. And it was just a reminder to me that yes, my wife and I have tried to welcome these people, but they might just have been angels that God had sent to us. And when we see immigration as an opportunity, when we welcome those who are strangers, we might find out that we are the ones who are blessed.